If you present a supporter with irrefutable, hard evidence that their favorite leader, brand, or ideology is flawed, you would logically expect them to reconsider their position. Instead, they often double down, committing more intensely to their original belief. This is the backfire effect. When data hits a central belief, it ricochets off. The impact strengthens the barrier, making it thicker. This behavior is often explained using the information deficit model, the assumption that blind loyalty is a byproduct of low education or a lack of critical thinking skills. However, research into cognitive styles suggests that the issue is not a lack of intelligence, but how the mind is structured to organize information. Rather than a simple cognitive deficit, uncritical support functions as a highly organized adaptive defense system. It is designed to navigate existential threats and secure a person's sense of social belonging. This system is built upon three specific psychological layers. The first is cognitive rigidity, the second is moral decoupling, and the third is identity fusion. To address blind loyalty effectively, we have to stop treating it as a factual error to be corrected, and instead see it as an active defense system that must be disarmed. To understand the blind supporter, we examine the structural cognitive features they use to process information. The way an individual holds a belief is often more significant than the actual ideological content. A primary driver of this structure is the need for cognitive closure. This involves an urgency to seize a definitive answer quickly, freezing that answer in place to avoid future ambiguity or confusion. Milton Rocache's dogmatism scale illustrates how individuals with high closure requirements utilize isolated compartments in their belief systems to maintain order. Think of this belief system as a container where thick walls drop down to form isolated compartments, preventing contradictory information from interacting. Because information is sealed in separate boxes, the supporter can hold logically contradictory ideas simultaneously without experiencing cognitive dissonance. This cognitive rigidity provides a powerful structural shield that actively protects the individual from the profound anxiety of living in an ambiguous world. This system faces a critical challenge when a chosen leader commits an undeniable ethical transgression. A common assumption is that these supporters must engage in moral rationalization, convincing themselves that the committed act was not actually immoral. But doing so requires them to condone bad behavior, which can threaten their own moral self-regard. Researchers at the Wharton School identified an alternative strategy: moral decoupling. This is a cognitive process where judgments of performance are selectively severed from judgments of morality. While rationalization tries to minimize the immorality of the act, decoupling simply separates the two. The supporter acknowledges the act is wrong, but argues it is irrelevant to the leader's ability to perform their duties. We see this in President Bill Clinton's high approval ratings following his impeachment. Supporters admonished his personal conduct while maintaining support for his performance. The exact same mechanism appears in the arts, such as with director Roman Polanski, where institutions formally distinguish criminal history from creative achievement. This separation allowed the film industry to reward the art with an Academy Award, even while the artist's personal actions remained strongly condemned. Moral decoupling allows a supporter to tip their hat to performance while wagging their finger at the behavior, leaving their own moral identity perfectly intact. Through this process, an ethical breach becomes a complete non-issue for the supporter, allowing their loyalty to persist without ever compromising their internal conscience. Beyond how information is processed, we must examine how the supporter fundamentally relates to the collective. Traditional social identity theory describes a classic hydraulic relationship where the personal self and the social self remain entirely distinct. When you join a group, you typically suppress your individual identity to fit in. In this model, as the social self becomes more prominent, the personal self is eclipsed. Members become interchangeable exemplars of the overall group. Blind loyalty is driven by identity fusion. The relationship between the self and the group is not hydraulic, it is synergistic. The boundaries dissolve entirely, creating a single entity where the personal and social self overlap and become one and the same. Because these identities are completely enmeshed, an external challenge to the group is no longer seen as merely an intellectual argument. The brain processes these contradictions as existential threats to the individual's identity and psychological stability. When you debate a highly fused individual, they do not hear a counterargument. They experience a severe threat to their very sense of self. When the structural rigidity of dogmatism, the ethical separation of moral decoupling, and the existential stakes of identity fusion are combined, they create a self-reinforcing system that is highly resistant to external challenge. This system is known as Identity-Protective Cognition. The fused identity is protected by dogmatic walls, while any moral contradictions are automatically decoupled and discarded. This explains why direct factual refutation often fails. Direct attacks on a person's facts are registered as attacks on their identity, leading to a deeper retrenchment into their existing beliefs. Because traditional debiasing is often ineffective, researchers suggest non-threatening interventions like psychological inoculation. By pre-bunking misinformation, individuals can build cognitive resistance before their identity becomes fused with a group. For those already fused, depolarization strategies include self-affirmation to bolster a person's sense of self-integrity and the use of trusted in-group leaders to communicate shared values. Loyalty is an ancient tool for survival, but uncritical loyalty can be used to override reality. To successfully deconstruct it, we must stop arguing over facts and begin addressing the existential needs that drive the devotion.